Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Sim. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. So I came across this video where this woman was talking about how white supremacy is literally a disease, and which we all know it's not a thing of today. It's not new, right? And so she was talking about how they made them believe that they are better than us. Now, one thing I have known is that why wouldn't they see? I've been telling black people that it will really be very long. It will be a very long time before you see women come out to say that they are going to help black people fight corruption or what is going on in black community, oppression and all that. It will really be a very long way. I mean, like it's going to be way too long, right? Because they've been, I don't know if it's indoctrinated to feel like they are way better than my people and us. They are better than us. So for that reason, like, how do you want me to help you fight your problems, right? So that when I am done fighting it, so who am I supposed to look down on? That is their consolation. I don't know if you understand what I am saying. This is their consolation that there is someone that I look better than. When they do not, they know that what is happening in their community is happening in our community, but they don't want to accept it. Why? Because they don't want to look like it is bad also in their community. That's why I keep saying, I love my people to death. Why? Because my people are going to tell you the way it is happening to them. They do not hide it. One thing I have loved them about is that the fact that they come out straight, looking you dead in the eyes and tell you this is what is going on. They don't care. You cannot shame me. Let's get into this video.
The greatest lie conservative America ever told white people is that they are inherently better than black people based off of their skin color. Not even just black people, but all people of color. And so now that Trump and his administration is signing into law all of these crazy bills that strip away the rights of everyday Americans, getting rid of healthcare, getting rid of USAID, just to name a few, the people that this is really going to affect are still huge fans of him. They don't care about the price of eggs anymore because as long as their enemies are doing badly, they don't care if they're doing bad. One historical fact that has always stood out to me is that poor white people made up a large part of the Confederate Army during the Civil War. These were people that were literally broke as a joke. No land, no slaves. There were literally free black people that were way richer than them at the time. But they were down to join the white elites at the time in an effort to hold down black people. Full time, their prospects are not gonna get better. I went to high school in the South, and I will never forget my freshman year. One of my ex-friend's dads asked me if my father had ever gone to college because he was such a well-spoken immigrant. And my father has a JD, which is a law degree. This man's daughter was like 16 or 17 in the 9th grade and could barely read because his daughter wasn't even smart. White supremacy is truly a disease. It is, in my opinion, a demonic possession. And in order for this country to heal, we need to root it out.
History of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, in the colonies, the colonial elite, looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants, who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up, and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another, or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote-unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people. right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon, the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. Fast forward to the Civil War era. And you have, I'm from the South, right? My people, the elite in my part of the country, right, actually announced that the reason they wanted to break away from the Union and possibly go to war with their brothers and sisters to the North was in order to maintain slavery and white supremacy. They said that at the time. We lie about it now. And we say it had nothing to do with that. But of course, at the time, they didn't have any shame about it, so they just said it openly. Right? The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government was the great truth that the Negro was not the equal of the white man. So that's the reason the Confederacy was formed and existed. But here's the trick. If I'm rich and I want to go to war to protect my ownership in other human beings, my property, but you're poor and you don't own any enslaved people, why the hell would you go fight to protect my stuff? Because I'm a rich person. I'm not going to fight. Rich people don't go to war, right? Rich people get poor people to go to war for them, whether it's in 1860 or whether it's during the 1960s or whether it's today, right? Rich folks get doctors to write notes for them that say that they have heel spurs, and that's why they can't go to Vietnam. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, you can Google that shit because he's sitting in the White House right now, right? Oh, I can't go fight. I have heel spurs. Send some poor kids to do that for me, please, right? So that's been a long-standing tradition. So the rich have to figure out a way to convince the poor to go fight for them. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard sell, right? Like, how the hell, why would you do that? Why would you go fight to protect my property rights when you don't own anything? The only way you would do it is if that rich person comes to you and says, hey, listen, you gotta go fight because we gotta maintain our way of life, because if these people get free, they're gonna take your jobs. No, fool, they already got your job. That's how it works, right? Because if I'm white and I got to charge you $1 a day to work on the farm, but you can get a black person to do it for nothing because you own them, guess who got the job? Free got the job, right? So in a sense, poor white folks would have been better off joining with black folks to overthrow the slave system. That would have raised the wage floor of all working people.
Saying that wokeism is just as bad as MAGA means that you don't care about the bad things that happen in this country as long as it happens to black people. A lot of groups outside of our community have been saying over and over again that what led us here was the leaning into woke politics. Even Democratic leadership has echoed that statement. The leaning into woke politics was the thing that made life difficult for the Democratic Party. To make matters worse, there are other black Americans who will echo that sentiment as well. A lot of them found themselves in the Oval Office, in the White House, not too long ago. It's upsetting. It's disturbing. It is very disheartening that a word, a term that we used as a way to help people understand that there is a time in your life where you will become very aware and very open to the fact that social justice impacts everyone's life every single day. There is nothing that has been woven into our criminal justice system, our housing system, our medical system, our media that has not been influenced by social justice. And understanding that all of these things are connected, that all of these things affect each other, and you cannot ignore that, is the definition of wokeism. You see, a lot more people are woke than they realize. A lot of MAGA is actually woke, and they don't want to accept it. But see, to them and people like them and anyone who has an issue with wokeness, they only see that as an attack on white America. They see that as a way for society to push out white America and not make people understand how social justice and social inequity has really caused our country to not progress at the pace that it should be progressing. But that's not a conversation people want to have. Why? Because it's a much more complicated conversation. It's a much more nuanced conversation. It's a conversation that requires personal accountability. But people in this country don't want to do that. People in leadership in this country don't want to do that. All they know how to do is pass the blame. Find a bad guy, find someone or something to call the problem, and push all of our issues on to that situation. And this is where we have come with wokeness, with anti-wokeness, with DEI. You're wondering why all these companies are continuing to roll back DEI or go against woke, or all these entities are trying to pull away from that. And you're wondering why. It doesn't make any sense. It's because they are filled with people who don't want to take that personal accountability. CEOs are watching businesses lose money by the day. Target is about to go under. Walmart losing business by the day. Amazon losing business by the day. Tesla losing business by the day. And they still have it in their minds that getting rid of DEI and wokeness is the way to go. They do that because they don't have to take personal accountability. They can just get on this wave of saying that all of the problems that we are dealing with right now have to do with this unlawful push that really only started in 2020 to make equity a focus in this country. Wokeness was never the problem. It was people's response to wokeness, people's lack of compassion to how these problems affect society at every single level. That was the issue that people faced in this country. And it's the issue we're still facing. It's the issue we're going through right now. This is why we are going backwards and not forwards. But let me tell you, the people who don't share my skin tone, that believe wokeness was the problem, they also believe that it has to get worse before it gets better. But I got a little secret for you. Your selfishness, your prejudice, your discrimination is only going to make things worse. Any company that goes backwards socially, also goes backwards economically. There is no payoff to getting rid of wokeness, because the idea that it's a problem in the first place is nothing but pure ignorance. So the people are all still very angry about yesterday, and I'm right there with you. But I had to do some digging on where do we go from here, because, even though the tougher task was to get this bill passed in the House, it does still have to go through the Senate. And even after that, there are like 2 or 3 more levels of negotiation, and they will have to vote on this all over again. So in this moment, the American people are not going to be waking up to all their benefits being taken away. But as I said last night, what did we learn? The Republicans don't feel like your voice matters more than the people telling them to vote a certain way. At this point, they're playing in your face. They're playing in all of our faces. I mean, they got Elon Musk in there actually running a cabinet meeting. So right now, the people need to decide just how angry, just how passionate, just how serious they are about forcing the people we voted into those positions to listen to what we want. Now, in the president's last term, he was very, very serious about getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. We all remember that, right? That was one of his big talking points when he ran for president the first time. That was something he was determined to make happen, even though it was going to harm millions of Americans. You see, a lot of people forget the positions that he put us in last time he was president, because he spent the 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency trying to convince you none of those things ever happened. But they did. He had the same type of power and influence over Congress that he did this time, and he was dead set on getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. They introduced legislation in Congress, and it made its way all the way through. Republicans in the House got together, voted on moving it to the next level, and people were very, very upset about that. It also led to a lot of them losing their seats when midterm elections came about, and then we all know how things worked out when the presidency came around in 2020. Now, they are trying to convince us that free and fair elections won't happen anymore, but I swear they don't have as much power to control something like that as they want you to believe. So the goal is to essentially kill the passion of the American voter, all right? That is what they want. They want us to eventually get to a point where we don't care what happens, we don't push back on them anymore, and we don't feel like we matter to the people who we elected to represent us. But let me tell you something, the American people never stopped pressuring their legislators back then, all right? No matter how many times that it went through each chamber, no matter how many times they kept trying to push it to become a law that the Affordable Care Act would go away, the American people did not stop pressuring them. It eventually got to a point where there was a vote on the Senate floor. I remember watching this happen, okay, because it was like this vote was going to be what determined whether or not the bill actually got to the president's desk. It was a late night vote too, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but it did not happen, all right? Eventually, it was stopped. There were Republicans who changed their mind. And the reason they changed their minds is because the people reminded them that it would be much more detrimental to those politicians to not defend them if they wanted to keep representing them in Washington, D.C. This is where we are now, all right? If I haven't said it before, I'm going to say it again. The people are not angry enough with their politicians. The people are not angry enough with the ones who represent them, and they need to pressure them more, because they're definitely getting some kind of threat or pressure from the other lawmakers. They're definitely getting some kind of threat or pressure from the administration, okay? So it is up to us to make that not as important. Does this make sense? The House and the Senate so far are not on the same page when it comes to this resolution, okay? The Senate understands that people are going to be very, very hurt by this thing passing. So you need to keep that message in their ears. This is only over if we all decide to walk away. So keep that in mind, give it some thought, and get angry.
This is all I got from this video. And before I continue, I am going to ask this. Why is it that these people do not even know the meaning of woke? Because I've been seeing them comparing woke to MAGA. How? How are they the same? What do you mean by woke? Because I have seen so many of you with ridiculous definition of woke. But anyways, I am tired of defining woke to you people, and there is no need talking to you people about woke. Say whatever you want to say. Compare woke to anything you want to woke. Woke means a lot to Black people, and that is what it will continue to be. And we are still going to continue to be woke, because how do you live a life as a human being and not be woke? I see a lot of you tagging woke to different meanings. Now, you all already know woke is now the second N word. They couldn't say N word. They moved to woke. They from woke to affirmative action, from affirmative action to DEI. Just send you people. Now let me get back to where that what's his name again? I don't remember his name, but you all remember that to these people, they are way better off. And if you all have ever looked around, you definitely will see it in their attitude too, because they give you that I am better off than you, than anybody. And you can imagine somebody coming out to tell me that you are better. Like, what are you better off? Do you know that Black women are the most educated demographic ever? Have you not heard that? So why is it that each time you see Black people, first of all, you have to look at them like, ask them, did your father go to school? Did you go to school? And all that, like, trying to see if you can go. You all are really moving correct for sincerely speaking. Now, the problem is that these people really do not even understand what is happening to them, because I remember saying this over and over. I always said that it is them, the rich white people telling the poor ones that they're problem. And if you look around, this is something that they've been operating on. Something they've been operating on. They think that we are the problem, not knowing that those people, those bourgeois, are your problem. We have to say, I don't know. I remember sometime I brought a video about a white woman. She lived like, she is poor, right? So she was saying that their story and Black people's story are the same. But the problem is that white women will never come together and look for a way to solve their problem. That what all of them are going through, like they are going through a whole lot, but they will never come out to speak on it. Why? Because they don't want to be the poor or the ones that they said that they are not living well. Because to them, people think that once you are this, you are rich or you have something. No, my people live better. I know what I am saying. We are not the richest, but we can actually stand up for ourselves and say, yeah, we do not have, right? And we know we do not have. But some people do not have, but they cannot come out to say they do not have. That is why Black people are so open. That's why when it comes to Black history, Black experiences, they scream about it. They shout about it. I love the fact that my people are very loud about what is going on in their community or everywhere in general. And when you look around, you can see Black experiences, how it is being shared. Do you know why I concentrated so much on African America? Because African Americans do not hide what they are going through. How many times do you see me talk about Black British? I don't talk about them because they are hiding their problem. And one way or the other, their problems will always look for a way to knock them on their face. Because they think Black people talk about, yes, they have to talk about race because they were born into race. They make them believe it. And one thing with it is that if you do not see, some people really do not understand how this work. You really have to look down deep to see how it works. That's why I keep saying it. As your child is growing and you do not enlighten them on some certain things, the street will teach them. And you know how it happens when the street teaches your son or your daughter something. You bring them down, you call them, you tell them this is this, this is that. And as they keep growing from CRT, civic education, history classes, they absolutely will absorb the remaining words. You must not teach them everything. But as a child is growing, they are very inquisitive to learn. That is, if you start it. They don't understand what Black people have been through. That's why when they want to talk about it, they will keep talking about it. So people will know, because the media is so good at denting my people, because that is what you all do. You all will not see all the Black educators, boys, men and women, the greatest investors, the rich one, the high, but they always want to talk to you about the project or what is going on in the project or how drugs came into when they were the ones that planted the drugs that came into Black community. See, I don't know how to say it, but for those that keep saying Black, you see, it looks like one thing like this year, this man said that sometimes we are not angry enough. Why am I saying it? I'm saying this because the death of was this beautiful woman, the woman that died some months back, that when she caught the cops and she told them, do not hurt me, do not harm me. I forgot her name, but her name like rings in but I can't place it. I am sure you all know who I'm talking about. It was that her death that would have changed so many things. I am not saying a lot. Breonna Taylor, all of I remember those ones. But that one shook my community. One thing sometimes is that we are just going to talk about it for a minute. That is the end. We won't talk about it again. The matter dies off. Sometimes you really have to be angry for so long. You have to hold grudges for so long. That's why I keep telling people it is at this point in time, it is okay to hold grudges. I am clocking out. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.